Hello, everyone. Welcome to Black Man Speak. I'm your co-host, the J.R. Stewart.
And I'm your co-host, the Tommy D. Duncan III, otherwise known as TD3. Jimmy, it is Wednesday, March the 20th, 2024. And if it is Wednesday night,
It's certainly Black Man Speak. So let's give a shout out to Liquid for providing our theme music. And if you haven't already, please hit that like button, subscribe to our channel, and then spread the word. If you're watching the show tonight, invite a friend or a guest to come watch it with you so you have something interesting to talk about during the week. And also, let's give a shout out to Forest Films in our own studio for providing our virtual studio. With that being said, Tom, let's get to our guest and to our show tonight. Let's do what we do best, which is bring the most informative news about the Black community to social media. What do you have lined up for us tonight?
we have something very special for everyone tonight, Jimmy. It is Women's History Month, the month of March, and we are going to come with a fire with our women's panel discussion, who are going to discuss the most critical issues for African American women today. And we have four sisters that are going to bring the fire and the funk. We're very proud to have them this evening. And you know what, Jimmy, because we know we're going to need a lot of time, I am going to skip the birthdays today.
Okay.
And what I'm going to do is just highlight two sisters that, historically speaking, are very significant, just to kind of warm things up. I'm pretty sure anybody who knows anything knows these sisters' faces right now, Jimmy, but we're just going to highlight these two sisters for Women's History Month. And then we're going to go ahead and start with our panel discussion. First, Jimmy, I know you have to know
Yes.
who this face is here, Jimmy, but for those of you out there, especially maybe some of you young folks who don't know, this is the great Shirley Chisholm, who
Yes.
in 1968 became the first African American woman elected to the United States Congress, and also became the first Black candidate, man or woman, for a majority party nomination for the president of the United States. And for those of you who probably watch a little TV, you probably know this, but you'll probably be seeing this at a theater near you. There's going to be a film. I think it's on actually Netflix, Jimmy,
Okay.
on the story of Shirley Chisholm. The
Well
great
deserved.
actress Regina King is going to be playing the role of Shirley Chisholm. So definitely looking forward to this, Jimmy. I'm not a big time movie watcher, but I'm going to have to check this one out.
Well, Tom, please do. It's well deserved and long overdue.
And the second person and last person I'm going to have on our spotlight for this show and for Women's History Month, Jimmy, you probably know this face too. Miss Barbara Jordan,
Yes, I
the
do.
first African American woman, first African American elected to the Texas State Senate after the Reconstruction period, the first Southern African American woman elected to the United States House of Representatives, and the first of two African Americans elected to the U.S. House from the former Confederacy since 1901. And this, of course, is alongside the great Andrew Young. So shouts out and heads up to the great Barbara Jordan. May they both rest in peace, but continue to highlight Women's History Month, Jimmy, because, you know, people may leave, but their message and their ideas don't die.
Well, Tom, one other thing is that the guests that we have on are welcome back anytime, and women are welcome to come speak and participate in Black Man Speak. So it's not that we're just waiting for Women's Month to recognize our sisters. Our sisters are welcome on this show at any time. So you ladies can come back anytime and have a discussion. We welcome you. You're always invited. You have an open invitation.
All right, Jimmy.
Say, Tom, let's get started, man. Let's do what we do best.
Let's get this party started right. Before we get started, I want to thank Ms. Audrey K. Booker for joining us on the chat line, and our good friend and compatriot, the Uncle Asar Al-Kabilan as well. What we're going to do now, ladies and gentlemen, is introduce our special guests to the screen one by one, where they will briefly introduce themselves, and then we will start the show. First, we have Faye Fleming, who is an entrepreneur, an author, a speaker, you know, back in the day, I think we used to call them a Renaissance woman. This sister here is cold-blooded, is a Renaissance woman. And thank you for joining us tonight, Faye. Just open us up, tell us a little about yourself and what you do, because we know you have a lot of stuff, but we got to get down to the subject of conversation. So tell our audience a little bit about who you are and what you do.
First of all, thank you for allowing me to share this podcast with you and DJR. My name is Faye. I am a woman that does lots of things. In my career, I've done everything from being a Fortune C-level executive to an entrepreneur, author, and most importantly, I'm a mom. So I'll just say that. I have a great passion for my own people and for all the coaching that I do in small businesses and strategy that I do with mid-caps and Fortune corporations. And I am honored to be here tonight with the other women who are joining us.
All right. All right, next we have Miss Carla Crystal Magruder, who, along with Faye, has been on our show before for some other podcasts. We want to thank you for joining us. She is a genetic counselor, but a sister of many talents and many skills. You know, one of the smartest people that I know, but we're going to have her to briefly introduce herself and what she does.
Thank you, Tommy, and good evening, everyone. I am Carla. I am a genetic counselor. Most folks don't know what that is. That's okay. I'm a genetics expert. So what that means is that I specialize in clinical genetics. So looking at your genes based off your family history, even your personal history of health to determine if we can find a genetic reason for why things happen, which is important. Because if we know that in the medical field, we can then guide the things that you do, make it more personalized. Should you be getting mammogram screening at 25 versus at 40? Should you be getting your prostate screened earlier? Should you be getting colonoscopies more frequently? And you hear me talking about cancer while I am board certified and licensed in all states. I am specifically inclined to do a specialty, which is in cancer, where I've been published on conditions that increase risk of colorectal cancer. But I'm also board certified and specialized in cardiogenetics, so looking at disease, heart disease, as well as pharmacogenetics, so looking at how your medicine and your genes interact, all to make sure that we stay here longer. I work for Color Health. I'm also partnered with the NIH, working on their research program, and I have my own business as well, Good Genes LLC, where I do public speaking for genetics in all different arenas, depending on what you like. And I am on the board right now of directors for the National Society of Genetic Counselors. I'm also a proud mom of 3 little girls and happy to be here in Texas.
Cool. All right. Ms. Barbara Turkington, welcome, welcome, welcome. We want to thank you for joining us this evening. Ms. Barbara, you know, you have not been on our show before, but we're so looking forward to having you. I know that you have been in the Air Force, you've had corporate roles, you've been an entrepreneur, but be a little bit more specific and tell us about what you do. We are looking forward to it.
Well, I recently retired as the assistant director at St. Louis County Library. I spent 20 years in the Air Force, and after I got out of the Air Force, I owned a PR and marketing firm in O'Fallon, Illinois, and switched from that to a construction company, which I owned and ran for 10 years, and I've worked in the not-for-profit sector. And it's almost like I'm trying to figure out what I want to do when I grow up. And at 75 years old, I still haven't figured it out. So right now I'm working with several not-for-profits as I make my journey through retirement.
All right. Excellent, excellent, excellent. And last, definitely not least, we have Miss Kendra Shorter, who has also been on our show a couple of times. And she is a licensed therapist for family and marriage. And Kendra, I've known you for a long time. You've been on our show, and I know you've always got a lot of great stuff to say. So introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about what you do.
All right. Hello, everyone. As Tommy mentioned, I am a licensed marriage and family therapist. I am currently working as a mental health clinician at the Texas Tech University Health Science Center. I also have my own private practice where I see mainly adults. And that's really what I'm doing right now. I reside in Lubbock, Texas. I recently moved back to Lubbock, Texas from the DFW area. And so My main goal is just to bring mental health services to those that typically don't have access to it or have limited access.
All right, that sounds good. So what we're going to do for our guests who are out there is we're going to let the sisters take control of this conversation. We just wanted to lead them in and make sure that we loved on them properly, bringing them in. But, the issues are them, the issues are there, and we don't want to be a distraction. So what we're going to do is lead them off with the questions and just let it rip. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to start out asking the first question, let y'all talk about it, and then let you all navigate from there in terms of the key topics that we have. But let's start off with this. When it comes to Women's History Month, which we've had, in the United States for a while, tell us about what you have seen as the celebration of womanhood and Black womanhood in particular. And do you believe that Black African-American women or women of the African diaspora, are they getting adequate representation in Women's History Month? What are you seeing? What are you not seeing? What would you like to see? And I will start off with Ms. Turkington, and then we will navigate from there, whoever wants to jump in.
As a woman who went into the Air Force in 1971 into officers training school, there are very limited opportunities for African American women or just women in general. And I think that it's very important that we continue to mentor women and introduce African American women to different facets of life. And I think as an older woman, I think we sort of lost that. I remember how I was mentored by other African American women in my different careers. And to me, it seems as though these days we don't have that. And I believe that we need to go back to that. Back in the day, if one of us made it, we all made it. And I think some of that has been lost in terms of helping each other to achieve what needs to be achieved, because I don't believe that we have gotten as far as we think we have. There's still a lot of discrimination. There's still a lot of lost opportunity. I recall being in construction, and there were things that women and African Americans and minorities didn't know that helped men be successful, white men specifically be successful in construction, and we just didn't know the rules. And there was nobody teaching us the rules, and we had to figure it out, and it was difficult to figure it out. So I think that we need more education of what it means to be a good mentor versus I've made it and you haven't.
Well, I would agree with you, Barbara, in the sense that it takes all of us putting the pieces that we have. It's like a big puzzle, right? And you have a piece, and Carla has a piece, and Kendra has a piece. And it's not until we put all of our pieces together that we're able to more smoothly navigate, whether it's motherhood or being in a corporate or some other kind of employee or running your own business. I think that in the general scheme of things, that Black women are celebrated during this month. And I think we're continuing to be celebrated in small roles. There's a bandwidth for Black women that's only this big in terms of looking at us as the full-figured and full-dimension people that we are. I don't think that we get that in the general audience. What do you guys think?
Oh, I think that's a really good question. And I'll have to say, I'm glad you gave that perspective, Barbara, because I never really resonated with Women's History Month. And also it comes on the tail end, right, of Black History Month. But I have seen a lot more Black women say we should, or kind of claiming March 1st as Black Women's History Day, or like a day, because it is right after Black History Month, at the beginning of Women's History Month. And so even though there are some great initiatives out there for women, I think because I don't separate my identity from Black woman, that it's like, oh yeah, this is the month. But even some of the things that are celebrated, is a little bit difficult for me to understand. And there is a kind of a growing boom, I think, because of the economic reasons more than anything, of younger generations wanting to go back to being traditional wives, where it is more, I think, glamorized as I get to sit back and let someone else take care of me. And you have had other women have to come forward, particularly white women, and go, no, 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 with the overturn of Roe v. Wade and everything else. There's a reason why we fought for women's rights. It's because we weren't able to get credit cards. We weren't able to get property in our name. Like, it was beyond you being tired of working a 9 to 5. It sounds glamorous to say someone else will take care of me and I can stay home and just cook, but along with that comes loss of agency, loss of, identities in some ways. And certainly if you're someone who wants that lifestyle, it should be your choice. So that's more thing like to have the right to choose whatever way you see yourself as a woman in this world. But I think community is definitely where it is, particularly with Black women, with different generations. From a health standpoint, us going back and really reaching back to doulas and other people in this crisis of maternal morbidity when women are dying in childbirth. I think we've lost some, I don't want to say lost recipes along the way, but just haven't been spoken about enough. So would love to hear all the community, especially those who have seen more than us, help us out.
So Kendra, how does that show up in your practice when you work with women?
Yeah, before I answer that question, I wanted to touch on something that Carla just mentioned. You stated that Black women are carving out March 1st as the Black Women History Day celebration. And it makes me think about how we had to carve out the month of February to celebrate Black history as a whole. And I think that speaks to the question that Tommy asked, is Women's History Month inclusive? And it's not inclusive if we're constantly having to kind of push our way through the door just to get a piece of the pie, I guess you can say. And so I think it's not fair. Why do we have to constantly carve pieces out of things in order for our accomplishments, our contributions to be recognized? Why can't it just be instilled in the celebration of just history or the celebration of women as a whole? So I think that answers that question. And Ms. Faye, you asked can you answer that question again for me?
No, we're just talking about how Black women show up in this celebration of the month. I was just curious about, you talk to a lot of women about personal issues, how that shows up in your engagement with them.
Yeah, I haven't necessarily had anyone specifically talk in regards to women's history, but I do notice that a lot of Black women are coming not feeling supported or celebrated as a whole, whether that's within their families, within society, whatever it may be. And that is taking a toll on Black women. And the only space that they feel heard is sitting across from somebody once a week for an hour. And that shouldn't be the case, because that's just a small component of their lives. And so if you are using that moment to get everything out and really feel yourself and be able to express yourself, it just makes me think, what are you going through throughout your daily lives? And I think, and again, that as a whole speaks to the lack of representation and lack of our voices being heard and the lack of support, just in general.
I heard someplace that the two most maligned and overlooked groups were African American women and Asian men. And when you look around, you think, oh my God, that's true. We're kind of a non-entity, but we're toiling all the time for our families, for our jobs, and for society. And we're the kingpins many times of things that do happen. And I think it's just a travesty that we constantly have to go over it and over it again and again. And I think that is primarily because we don't know our history and we don't know the great things that have come from African American women.
So Barbara, it's interesting that you should say that, because I did some research looking at the three facets of Black women in terms of Black women as employees, Black women as mothers, Black women as business owners and entrepreneurs. And when you roll all the data up and you look at even across just those three segments, those three groups, the three biggest issues are, number one, mental health.
Mhm.
Mhm.
And number two is something I call aggression or slash discrimination. And it's about being invisible at work. No matter what you do and how you perform, you just are never seen when it's time for a promotion, right?
Mhm.
And it's
Exactly.
about lack of resources and support if you're a business owner. Because it's not that we're not brilliant people. I know this to be true since I've been coaching small businesses for years. It's about we don't have access to
Access.
influence, to affluence, and wealth. And then the last box across all three of these is criminal and environmental injustices. You know, if you're a parent and you have a teenage son, you got issues just wondering if that kid is going to make it home from his part-time job. If
Exactly.
you are not high income and you live in a neighborhood that has a big waste dump next to you, those issues are real because they manifest themselves in health issues.
So happy that you brought that up. And certainly thinking about one of the issues that I think is really important in facing Black women would be not just this lack of community, but like you said, this us being at the forefront of things, but not really being creators of things and not being recognized as being forefront of everything. And when you say it shows up in your health, one of the things that we look at when we talk about when you go to your doctor, make sure that you're heard, make sure that you talk about your pain, make sure that you mention all these different symptoms. But someone brought up a point of saying it's actually a privilege to even be able to listen to your body, to even know that a symptom exists.
Yep.
And so that's something where I'm like, you're like, oh, this hurts and that. If you have these pains and different things going on all the time, you don't even have that privilege of even knowing that. And I think, again, that's where community and having someone older show us the way. And it seems like so many times we're speaking different languages. Someone who's older may be like, especially we call it in my generation respectability politics of like, you have to look a certain way and be a certain way to perform. So if somebody has bonnet on and eyelashes on, you may go, she doesn't respect herself. But she does. It's just she shows up in a different way because she's had the privilege through work of other generations of being able to show up how she needs to.
I totally agree with that. And, Barbara, to your earlier point about people not getting what they need in terms of the rules and the structure and how you navigate just life lessons, even if it's just mother wit as opposed to corporate information. And sometimes it's for lack of people understanding until they get the door slammed in their face that they really do need this information. And sometimes it's for lack of having people like you and Deborah Patterson and other people that I know that just organically and naturally share what you know with the people who are coming up behind you.
You
No,
know,
I
I've noticed. Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry,
I'm
Miss
sorry.
Barbara.
Go ahead, please.
I was just gonna say I noticed that there tend in some areas, and I wouldn't say this to be for all Black women, but I have myself, and I know others who have experienced where they have tried to connect with older Black women or they have sought out mentorship, but it's kind of like there's too much of a competition or they're not wanting to bring somebody up with them in fear that it could replace them because if you as we all know the representation of Black women in a lot of companies and businesses are slim, and so it's that okay we both can't be on top, let me not share as much as I know with this person or this fellow Black woman because I don't want her to take my shine or take my spot. And so, being in a space where you, Miss Faye and Miss Barbara, can mentor, what would you tell to younger women in regards to that challenge or not feeling as if they can go to an older Black woman for that guidance?
Well, I would say that the first thing is that they have to embrace the philosophy of when you share something with someone else, you are the first one to be blessed, right? Because
Yes.
if I share something with you, then that puts you in a position to advantage me when you're someplace because we can't all be at the same places. We're not all in the same meetings, right? So, me being kind, me being conscious, me being helpful to other Black women that are around me, and they don't even have to be in my corporation, my organization, my sorority, whatever. Because this is what I do know that what happens to one of us happens in some way to many of us. Barbara, how do you see it?
I agree. And I think it has been my mission throughout my career to mentor younger women, because it's when we came up, we had no one. We had to fight the battle all by ourselves most of the time. You were, in many cases, the only one. And back then, it was like, okay, we got that one. We're going to do everything we can to make sure she's successful. We had to do everything we can to make sure she's successful. And I sense that that was lost. And that's why it's important to me that if I can mentor a young woman about how to be successful in business, how to be successful in life, how to be successful in in a corporate environment, I'm all over that. Because if we don't protect and help each other, we'll be lost as a group of people. And I get the feeling that we're losing each other. We're losing that drive. We're losing that connectivity that I think that makes us who we are. Because I believe Black people are some of the smartest people in the world. We can do anything. And if you look back at our history, what we have survived and what we have overcome, and how you would not reach back and give that person behind you that hand to help them up. And I would love to see those times again. And sometimes they say, well, you know how old people are, and I certainly am one of them. But I think that's my mission in this phase of my life, to make sure that we do mentor young people, we do help them.
I do have a question before my background gets a little bit louder, and it's about mental health. Of course, how it's something where thankfully everybody's talking about it more. But Kendra, especially thinking about something I heard when we're talking about self-care and getting therapy and all those things, I heard something that was like self-care and therapy. We can't self-care and therapy outweigh out of systemic injustice. Like, and I think while it's great to say what can you control and deal with, issues in your past, that impact your future, also recognizing that it is super hard out here, and that there are people who are still mourning the last few years, whether you lost your job, lost all those things. So I'm just always curious, Kendra, what you think, and certainly thinking about previous generations, what they've done in the face of adversity, especially when it seems like, at least now, that there's just a lot of angst in general.
Yeah, I think it just really pinpoints back to just support, and it goes along with that mentorship, it goes along with that guidance. And as I mentioned earlier, therapy is just 1 hour out a day, or self-care is just a few moments out of a week. And so you can't look for that to be the miracle pill or the miracle thing that's going to just solve all your problems. And I think you have to be able to learn skills. You have to be able to learn how to navigate different settings and pull on those around you, the support, whether it's coworkers, whether it's your spouse or family members that can help you navigate through these things, because nothing is new under the sun. Everybody has been through something to the extent. And so being able to pull on the knowledge of others and use what other people have done to get through those challenges will be helpful. But it appears that we're in a state where people, like I mentioned earlier, don't want to help each other or aren't supporting each other as much as we saw support back in the day. And I think that's why it seems like people are struggling a whole lot more than they were in the past. People are struggling silently. And it's because you don't have a lot of people checking in and asking, how are you doing? We got through COVID. Everybody was real close and checked on each other during COVID. And then everybody just kind of slowly went back into a routine. And with just the world is hard right now, and finances and things to that extent, we're getting real isolated because we're just trying to get by day. But you still have to check in. You still have to be a support to someone. You still have to ask for support. Let people know that you are struggling in in just whatever way it is, because you can't read people's mind. And so I think a way to kind of help with that, again, is to just find support, ask for support, and just build that community back up.
I think we also have to not be afraid to ask for help. And that so often happens that people are afraid to let people know they're struggling or they're having a hard time. And it's difficult to say, I need help. But I think that's so important to say, okay, I'm not making it today, and I need to step back and I need you to show me some grace. And to be comfortable asking for help, because you never know what the other person is going through or what they're thinking. And everybody assumes that everybody is a millionaire, and they're not going to understand if you can't pay for your lunch at Taco Bell. But everyone is not. They're just not talking to each other.
Yeah. You got to be honest with yourself, and you got to be honest with others.
Exactly.
Well, I agree with Carla. I think that lots of us would improve our lives just by having more self-care. And that could be, going to someone like Kendra. That could be understanding what inspires you, what motivates you, and filling your life with that. And for me, that's giving myself permission. And it took me a really long time growing up in a corporate environment initially, and then moving from that into entrepreneurial journey, to give myself permission to just be me, to give myself permission to not fit into whatever it is they need to just be me as I show up authentically. I think the other thing that would help us is if Black women also begin to celebrate.
Yeah.
We can't fix everything. We can't get everything done. But if we would just take time to celebrate the things that we do get done, the things that we are good at. For example, when I did some research and looked at what's happening to Black female employees, the top things that we're dealing with is pay inequity, the lack of advancement opportunities, workplace discrimination, lack of representation in leadership positions, and having to juggle this whole work-life balance, right? Okay, so that's the environment, the landscape we have to operate in. However, if we just take the time to celebrate, we get some motivation by the fact of knowing that there are some women who, in spite of, have made a way. Ursula Burns was a former CEO of Xerox. And so she was the first Black woman of a Fortune 500 company. That's amazing in the time period that she did it. Rosalind Brewer was the CEO of Walgreens in March 2021. She was the only third woman, and this is in 21, to head a Fortune corporation on a non-interim basis. And right now, we only have 8 Black people running Fortune 500 companies, but 2 of them are women. So we have lots of territory to cover, but I think taking the time to recognize when we do get to the end of the journey and we celebrate that could give us some momentum to then have space to do the mentoring, to then have space to get self-care when we need it.
And I think one of the things that my father told us early on, and I think it helps when you're going for that leadership role, is everybody is just not going to like you. And so, okay, all right, so you need to do what you have to do. And, it may not be the most popular decision. It may not be the most popular, stance to take, but everybody's not going to like you. So you need to do what you need to do.
Yeah, I have a question regarding that. With being a Black woman in leadership, and this was just brought to my attention by one of my mentors earlier. I was going over some questions, and she stated that she finds herself torn between the line of showing passion and being excited about what she's speaking on in her workplace, in the other side of not coming off as angry or not intimidating those around her. And so what would you say to someone who is toying with that, having been in those high leadership roles?
For me, it was, sitting down with each new employee that came into my company or came into my squadron and going over the rules. These are the rules. These are how things are going to happen. And then admitting that I was not always right, but I was in charge. And it was something that we could discuss. It was something that we could discuss. But in the end, the decision was mine, and I'd have to live with that decision.
For me, when I've been in leadership roles, what I've learned over time to focus on is this thing, which is you can show them better than you can tell them. So a lot about who I am as a person, as a leader, as a Christian, as a mother, all of those things is my personal brand. So what I focus on now is to be very consistent and very clear on who I am. And whether you see me at church, you see me at a dance event, no matter where you see me, I am basically who I am. And that allowed me in the workplace to take a lot of heat off of my head about being stereotyped or put into a box and being expected to perform, to talk, to dress a certain way, to fall in line in a certain way. And now I just bring to the table and say, this is who I am. I am authentically leading this team. And my intent is for us all to prosper, for our customers to do well, for our management above us to do well. And here's our ground rules on how we're going to work. And I'm always open to a better way, but it's got to be a better way, not just something you want to personally change for yourself. So that's what's worked for me, is to stick to my brand.
So you don't code switch?
I don't. As a matter of fact, I make that part of my brand. I am infamous for being at big meetings or conferences, and sometimes I'm the speaker, and I'm sitting in the audience, and it's freezing, right? So I just get up, I locate the thermostat, and I adjust the temperature. And on the way back to my seat, people are like, "Oh, thank God she did that."
Oh, that's a thing right there. You doing what other people want to do or say.
I like how you talk about code switch, and really, Faye, you're talking about what I thought a lot about is who we doing this for. Like, we talk about the white gaze, right? Like, you're thinking about who's looking at you, and if the white gaze, GAZE, if you're doing things for that, you're going to be unhappy. You're going to be stressful, because you'll never be enough if you look at it that way. But even I am someone, Kendra, I do think a lot about strategy. So I don't code switch. Same thing, Faye, where me being someone new in leadership, I realize if I'm in the room, it's because you need me there. And I've proven 10 times over that I belong there. And also Black culture, the way we speak, the way we dress, everything has never not been cool. It's never not been cool. They will take it and, copyright it or whatever and make money off of it, put it on shirts. And we've been saying it for years. And so I still do think that there's a strategy that, as much as I know that we belong in those spaces, I'm not going to act like all the isms don't exist, especially in healthcare, especially in academia in healthcare, meaning, when you're publishing and doing things like that, it gets real rough out here. But so I actually like to, speaking of brand, the way that I talk more is more Southern than Black. And so I think that too grounds me in being like, I am a Black Southern person. And so my culture is inherently American, because this is just because you hyphenate me as Black American, African American, I'm American. This is who I am. So if I want to let my drawl come out, and I can say that working for a company that's based in California, I know that they find that charming. And I know that what they care most about anything is green, is money. Yeah. So if I'm saying, hey, I know the lingo of the people that we're trying to serve or that we're missing, then that translates well too. So I think there's a strategy there. And I will say that I am thankful that I have a partner, that I have a husband who understands that. And something that I do wish in the age where no one is getting married. My little brother, I asked him if he was getting married. He doesn't see a reason to. He doesn't see an economic benefit. He doesn't see, he and when he's making these facts, y'all, I'm like, well, dang, yeah, I can't. And I know that there are women, right, who are saying the same thing. Why would I get married? They're not going to uplift me, or rather perhaps needing men to show up, but in a different way that maybe they're not ready to show up in, more as an emotional partner than just a financial partner. So I'm thankful that I have someone when I do, if I am doing a day camp, will I still feel that code switch strong, or being in leadership and kind of having to see all the different sides before I make a decision. I can come home to someone who understands that without me having to say a lot, because he himself is in a leadership role. And, you know, even though we may not talk a whole lot about it, we can say a few words and be like, oh, that's it. Yeah.
Right, right.
So what do you guys think about Black mothers? If we look at ourselves across the spectrum as mothers, how do you see motherhood and the way people parent as being different now as opposed to any other time?
Oh, I think it's real different now. I know my father had us convinced that he could kill us and not one day of hard time. And I mean, today that just would not go over anywhere. That's not playing anywhere. But I, it's like, but I mean, I have so much respect for him, but it's like I don't know that my grandchildren would understand that at all. And I think that we're into being their friends and their chauffeurs and their activity coordinator. And I think there's in some sectors we need to get back to parenting instead of orchestrating.
Hmm.
Mm.
And
Well,
I'm just
I'm
saying
not.
things because I'm
Go
old.
ahead.
I'm sorry.
No, you're fine. I was just gonna say I'm not a mom yet, but I have had plenty of women of all races come into therapy with me who have kids around that 15 to about 25-year-old age range, and they're all have the same story of the issues of parenting that generation. And I think a lot of it is rooted in the fact that these parents grew up in the 80s and grew up during a time where a lot of kidnappings were happening. A lot of things were going on that was being shown in the media. And so it kind of instilled a fear. And then these parents also come from parents who are very strict. And so because of that, they kind of like vowed to be opposite of their parents, and they also vow to protect their children. And so in those early ages of them raising their kids, they're helicoptering. They're not allowing them to be outside of their sight. They can't go play outside. And then two, also they're more lenient. They're not as hard because they remember how it felt when their parents were tough on them. But they forget that these are the kids that are growing up, and that they're going to go into adulthood. And what does that look like for them in adulthood? And then they're starting to get those challenges of, well, they don't listen to me, or they're learning the hard way. They're putting themselves in situations that don't make sense. And I think that's why the trajectory has changed, and why parenthood is different than what it was a few years ago.
Yeah.
Or caller, you are actively parenting because we can see your children. So I'm waiting with bated breath to see you weigh in on this.
This is the little one who doesn't listen. And speaking, I don't have candy. Speaking of being chauffeur, my husband's being chauffeur to the other one right now, unexpectedly, which is why this one is here. But no, I don't want a cookie. Yeah. So that's the difference, Barbara, where I think I would have got slapped upside the head for not doing that.
Yeah.
Well, I want to reply to something that Audrey put into our chat. Her comment is, oftentimes these young girls and women who are talented struggle with mentorship because they feel like it's not what you know, it's who you know, to gain entrance into programs to help them. So, Audrey, what I would say to you is that it's not even that. I know I was raised in my early business career with it's all about who you know. But in reality, it's all about who knows you, what they believe about you, and based upon that, what they're willing to do for you. And that goes back to you being very clear about who you are, what your brand is, what your passion is, what your values are, and what you believe in. And being with like valued people. Like Barbara and I are like valued. We have the same values, which give us the same passion, which gives us opportunities to mentor, to do all sorts of things to support the women around us, above us, and those coming behind us. So I wish I had enough money I wish I had Oprah money to have billboards all across the Black community that say, no, it's not focusing on who you know. What you need to focus on is who knows you. And based upon what you show them, how you act around them, the decisions you make, what does that tell them about you? Because that's when they're going to make a decision about whether or not they will support you or mentor you.
And I think that goes back to some of younger people playing a game or thinking they're playing a game like other ethnic groups and not realizing the history. I can't remember if it was maybe you, Barbara or Faye, who said it earlier about knowing the history of what we've gone through. And I don't know, it's kind of like the chicken and the egg. You know, you don't have mentorship because you know the history, or you don't know the history because you don't have mentorship, and trying to figure that out. And even like, you know, I am someone who I don't do gentle parenting, I do gentler parenting. So, because, you know, people say, well, I got, you know, whooped all the time when I was younger and I turned out fine. And it's like, but did you? Like, are you sure? Like you have a job and stuff, but are you sure? Or like, think about the people who you know who got whooped all the time and they still ended up in prison. You know, and we know the system, you know, systems that put people there, but still it's one of those things where, again, thinking about a different time, still nothing new under the sun, like Kendra said, but just a time and era where we're fighting the phones, right? We're fighting little computers in people's hands. We're fighting all types of other things. And so, you know, I'm certainly someone that still believes in discipline and accountability, but also like I'm trying to raise you to be an adult, an independent person outside of me. So it means that I'm not necessarily disciplining you just to fear me, but I'm really trying to get to the heart of, I'm trying to get you to fear what I'm trying to hold you, whatever consequence comes from that. And sometimes that means me not yelling at you, but me saying, I'm gonna tell you 3 times, and then after that, whatever happens, happens. We got insurance, deductible is met, you know, but at the same time, sometimes like I'm not going to the hospital tonight. So if you don't listen to me, we're gonna tape it up because you'll figure it out. But then I also think that that takes other people who are older to understand why we're doing it that way. And certainly not anyone here, but not go too far into the shame. You can be shamed for you should do it this way, or I don't know why you're doing it that way, instead of saying, okay, that's a different way. We didn't do it that way. But let me tell you, just for whenever, you know, that doesn't work, let me tell you what worked for me. And then you can still dip into that. But I motherhood is something that I'm learning so much of. I think I have a really great relationship with my mom. And there are so many times, we talk several times a day, and I tell her so many times, I'm so sorry. Y'all didn't tell me it was this hard. Or you didn't tell me it was this challenging, or that I would feel this way, or that I would feel this pressure.
That's because they wanted to be grandparents. Why would they?
That's exactly what happened. So I rely on her so much, and other women so much, aunts and everything, even more so. And especially, I don't think it's something that we can do alone. And so, yeah, you do need that community of people to help you through that. And so the mentorship comment that Audrey brought up, I think is very important to know, that I think people are still thinking they're playing a game that doesn't really apply to us. Doesn't mean that you can't make it far, but we do have other considerations that I think everyone else can show us how to do.
But, you know, I think we also have to acknowledge that it's harder to raise children now, much harder than it was, I think, when I was a child, because we didn't have all the stimulation that they have now, the different things that they have now. I wouldn't be a parent today for anything, nothing, because it is so much harder from my perspective.
Well, thankfully, Caller did not agree, because otherwise we'd be hard pressed to have children in our neighborhood.
You know, and child care is expensive, because I can't remember, we're talking about community, but so many more people are more mobile, right? Where people aren't living in the same neighborhood they grew up in, where you can reach out to a cousin, to an aunt or someone else. People are spread out, or even then you can't rely on, some people can't rely on grandparents because grandparents are still working too. People
Yes.
aren't retiring, right? Like they can. So that's a challenge too.
So before we run completely out of time, the question in the air is, since this is an election year, what are your thoughts around what women should be looking at, what issues are important to Black women, and how we should be participating in this upcoming election?
I am someone, oh, go ahead, please.
No, please go ahead.
I'm someone super passionate about politics, and in college I was NAACP president, and just seeing how much policy drives healthcare. And I can see where it's every election cycle where someone goes, this doesn't really impact us. They've never cared about Black people. I'm gonna sit this one out, or I don't see the difference. And there's so many things that are impacting that. And I think really getting people to understand, if you want to burn it all down or you think nothing's gonna matter, that when things get burnt down, we're the ones at the bottom. We're the ashes first. And people will warm themselves off of our bodies and go on and make whatever decisions. We're the most impacted, no matter how much economic capital we have. So it's an election year, and I think my strategy for people is to remind people, you don't have to like who's in office. They don't have to be your best friend. They don't have to agree on every single thing that you're doing. And no, sometimes it can't be that you're voting on the ideal world. It really has to be, what is the alternative? So, reproductive health is always going to be something that impacts Black women. Again, we die more in pregnancies, wanted or not, period. It is life and death for us. So I think maternal health care is something that's important. And if you have someone who wants to take away your ability to not just make decisions, but whatever options are available for you, I still think that that's a big problem. That and student loans. I will stand down on student loans. If you've got a generation of people who are burdened, where it impacts credit scores, impacts what you can do, it means it also can't shop at your business. It means it also can't pay you, Faye, to come speak to me. It means that, I can't take care of you in your older years because I'm working myself to the bone too. It's going to be something that impacts all of us.
Well, I would certainly agree with you about maternal health. Our research company has been doing healthcare research for what, 15, 20 years, and it's not getting any better. We're still hearing stories about how, especially young Black women and women with less education, they're just getting rolled over. They have doulas. They've been working with their husbands or partner to birth this child naturally, and then their doctor decides that he's going to a ski event, and he calls them in and says, "Oh, we think your baby's at risk. We're going to have to take your baby right now." Or there's women that, they've had C-sections or they've had emergency surgeries, and they call and complain, "This is not right. I don't feel good." And in several research projects, we had a group after group where there were at least 2 women who had friends that died because they're not being heard. So I would agree with you that in this election cycle, healthcare is very important. So much more for us than any other kind of woman in the United States, because our numbers are getting worse and worse.
And I think we have to be advocates for ourselves. We have to be advocates, and we have to, communicate with the healthcare provider of what's really happening. How do you feel? And a lot of times you go to the doctor and you forget, oh my God, I forgot that my knee was hurting last week. I think it's important that we write down and document what's going on, and never go to the doctor's office without something to take some notes about, so that you can be your best health advocate.
Yes. Yes. I would say something that's important to me is pushing the initiative of increasing more Black people and more minorities in the mental health field, whether that's psychiatrists or psychologists and therapists. I believe I went to a conference not too long ago, and I think it said about 1 or 2% of mental health professionals are minorities, are Black. And so I think that's one of the things that I am looking for, is there to be a push in that, and diversifying the mental health field so that we feel more comfortable going into those spaces and seeking out those services.
So we've got one more comment. Tanya Hall says, what is your take on Black marriage? Dead or dying? Over 70% of Black women are unmarried. Over 65% of Black men are unmarried. What do you think is happening to the institution of Black marriage? Let's go to our therapist first.
I think it's getting better. As far as what I see in my generation and my peers, as far as I'm newly married, and I have a lot of peers that are newly married, and I see the push to be married, and not just married just to be married, but to start to build up that generation of having a whole family and not growing, having our kids come up in single parent homes. So I'm seeing a shift in that. But I think a big difference is a lot of women are focusing more on education. And some people may agree or disagree with this, but I feel like there's an issue with Black women not wanting to align themselves or partner with have partners that don't have the same level of education as them. But you realize that Black women are the most educated, and so it's kind of hard for you to only seek out men that are on the same level as you are, have the same level of education, and not letting that be the determining factor of who you marry and who you start families with, because you can find very educated, very smart, intelligent men who don't have degrees. And so I think that's something that needs to be addressed and discussed amongst our communities of educated Black women, is why is it that we are seeking or trying to seek out partners that have the same level as we do?
Yeah, and I see marriage on the decline, period. It's not just Black marriage. I know, and I certainly respect that we should be concerned about ourselves more than anything. And like I said, I've talked to my brother and to other people. You know, I've been married 12 years, so still consider that to be new. And I come from a family of a wonderful grandmother who was married over 50 years, who all along the way told me, make sure you do this, make sure you do that, because she was in a different type of struggle. And it was also looking at the reasons for why people married. Marriage is an institution, right? It is there for stability. It's there for other reasons. Hasn't, certainly, no matter Black, white, no matter where you look, hasn't been something that's there for emotional support. And that's where, all things being equal, where nobody can afford to stay home anymore. Everybody's working, mom, dad, wife, husband, whoever, where it's more so like, hey, I'm not saying that I don't need you as a provider, if we're both providing, but I need you to be my friend. Like, do you actually like me? Like, do you like me as a friend? Not what I can do for you. Because there are older men who get married, right, for the second and third time. And some people are like, oh, he's trying to marry somebody because he needs a nurse. He don't need a wife, he need a nurse. He get no dialysis is kicking, whatever. So I think it's the reasons that we're looking for partnership. Kendra, you brought up, like, why do you want someone same education level as you? Like I said, it's just that extra level of, can we understand each other and like each other on a different level? So I think that's just one thing to think about, and I hope we all find it, and hope we find community wherever you are. Because yes, you need your friends, you need your girlfriends, but we need love. We need a soft space to land.
So I think we're getting a nudge to wind down. How about we each do a closing gift to the audience? Barbara, do you want to go first?
Oh my gosh. Yeah. I think the thing that pops in my head is, do something. Even if it's wrong, you will learn something from it.
Mm-hmm.
I think for me, it's what I said earlier. Be honest with yourself and Be honest with those around you and stand up for yourself and speak up for those around you, and just continue to build a community and find the support system.
Carla?
I'm in Texas, so I can say this, but go outside, get some sunlight, get your eyes away from the screen. It's going to help you from a health standpoint. Moving your body and not being sedentary is going to help, but also it's going to help you just to get some balance. And I think that we all need that. We need those good nutrients and vitamins. That's something you can do that's free. Get outside.
Get outside.
Okay, so I'm going to say for employees, one bit of wisdom is you need to stay ready so you don't have to get ready when opportunity comes. For Black entrepreneurs, I'm going to say business success is more about building deep, not just working hard. And for mothers, I'm going to say in good days and bad days, God is still the common denominator. So no matter what happens, we can intentionally love our children and model the kind of people we want them to grow into being, whether they choose that path or not. Gentlemen, I think we've had a great discussion. Hopefully our audience has learned something. And Audrey is saying, amen, and be true to yourself. Absolutely. Absolutely.
Take care, everyone.
Take care.
I think the guys are coming back on to close us. Is that right?
So we want to thank you ladies for bringing us a fantastic show. And Jimmy, if he joins us at a minute, we want to thank you so much for bringing our audience a different perspective, an intelligent perspective, an intuitive perspective as to, you know, what the sisters are saying. You both are all, I mean, you all are brilliant and fantastic, and we want to love you all and just thank you so much for what you have brought. Jimmy?
Yeah, get my mic over here. Yes, and please come back. You know, this show is called Black Men Speak, but it's really a voice for everyone. So please come back. You ladies are welcome anytime. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
That being said, Tom,
Ladies and gentlemen.
I'm going to give you the last word, and then we're going to close.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, if you like this show, make sure if you have not done so, you subscribe, you like, and you share this